Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
In the previous module, I introduced the concept of ecological footprint. We went through a web-based ecological footprint calculation and understood how to interpret the results. The purpose of this module is to go into the details of the calculation methodology or the mathematics behind the ecological footprint calculation. To recap, ecological footprint tells you the amount of land needed to produce the resources used by a person and to assimilate the waste produced by a person, and the unit that in which ecological footprint is reported is global hectares. Now, as the previous module emphasized on, the way to calculate ecological footprint is to collate together various resources that we are using on a day-to-day basis and convert those into the area required. Now, when you think of doing these calculations, there are certain challenges or important questions that come up. The first question is, how do you convert a resource consumed or waste generated into area required? What is that calculation? How is it done? The second question is, how do you compare areas across different regions or countries? In other words, different countries or different regions have different yields, different productivities. Are these areas same? Is 1 hectare in one country same as 1 hectare in another country? That is the second important question that we need to answer. The third question is, how do you compare across and consider different types of land? For example, the resources that you need are provided by either agricultural land or forest land or built up area. How do you compare them? Is 1 hectare of agricultural land same as 1 hectare of forest land? This is also an important question. So in the rest of this video, I will answer these three questions sequentially and in the process explain the method of calculation and the mathematics behind it. So let's start with the first question. The first question is, how do you convert a resource being consumed into area required? Let us say I am thinking about resource P that an individual is consuming, and let us assume that P is the total amount of resource consumed on an yearly basis in kilograms. We can think of wheat consumption. Let us say P is the total amount of wheat that we consume as an individual in 1 year. If I want to relate that to the area required, I will need to know the yield of wheat for the region which is producing that wheat. So let us assume that Yn is the national average yield of resource P, or in this case, let us say Yn is the national average yield of wheat in kgs per hectare. If you know these two numbers, the calculation of area required is fairly straightforward. The area required in hectares will be P divided by Yn. So that will convert the resource that you are consuming, in this case P, into the area required. Now, an important question here is, how do you account for the consumption of a derived product? Going back to the case of wheat, we don't generally consume wheat in its raw form. Wheat is converted to wheat flour, and wheat flour is then used to produce something that we consume, something like chapati, roti, bread, naan, and so on. So, we need to modify this process, this calculation process slightly to account for such a situation. So let us now assume that P is not the amount of resource consumed, but P is the amount of derived product consumed per year, again in kilograms. And let us say Yp is the national average yield of the resource that is used for making the derived product P. So if we go back to the example of wheat, P now is the amount of rotis I consume per year in kilogram, and since roti, in order to make roti, wheat is the resource that is used, raw material that is used. So Yp is the national average yield of wheat which is used to make the derived product. Now, in order to complete the calculation, I need one more factor, and that is known as the extraction factor or extraction ratio in ecological footprint methodology. This extraction ratio is the amount of product produced per kg of the resource. So it is a unitless number, or in other words kg per kg. It's a ratio. So in the case of wheat, the example that we are discussing, extraction ratio will capture the kgs of rotis produced per kg of wheat, which is the original resource. So in other words, it captures the efficiency of converting the original resource into a derived product. Now the calculation is modified as follows. So now you calculate based on these numbers, you calculate the yield of the derived product yd as multiplication of yp into the extraction ratio, and the area required is now p divided by yd. Previously, when we were only dealing with the resource, it was p divided by yn, but now because we are talking about the derived product, the area required is p, which is the quantity of derived product consumed divided by the yield of the derived product yd. Okay, and similar equation is used for several resources that you are consuming. Now this answers the first question, how to convert the resource into area required. Now let's move to the second question, which is how to compare areas across different regions. And let me start with an example. Is 1 hectare in Germany same as 1 hectare in Algeria? And I have given some numbers to make this point. The average wheat yield in Germany is about 7 to 8 tons per hectare. In contrast, the average wheat yield in Algeria is about 2 tons per hectare. So the land in Germany is much more productive. So if an individual is using land equivalent of 1 hectare in Germany versus land equivalent of 1 hectare in Algeria, are they the same? Should they be considered as same? This is the point that we have to now answer, because land in Germany is more productive. Now the answer to this question is no. 1 hectare in Germany will not be equivalent to 1 hectare in Algeria, and this is captured in the ecological footprint calculation method by using something known as the yield factor. So yield factor is based on the relative yield of particular region or country compared to the world average. So if we take world average yield of a particular resource and take that as 1, then the yield factor tells you what is the yield of a particular country relative to that world average. So here in this table I have given yield factors for different regions or different countries. So Algeria is 0.3, Germany is 2.2, which means as compared to world average, the yield in Algeria is much lower, 0.3, while yield in Germany is much higher, 2.2, and so on. So now the yield, the area required calculation is modified as follows. This is the previous calculation. P divided by yd is the area required on a region for a country. So if I can say that if I am doing this calculation for a country for Algeria, then this gives me the area required in hectares in Algeria, and we multiply it by this yield factor, which gives me which normalizes the different regions in some ways. So when I multiply this number by yield factor, it captures the importance of different regions in terms of productivity. So if I am using 1 hectare of land in Germany versus 1 hectare of land in Algeria, because the yield factor of Germany is very high, it captures the fact that I am using much more resources, because 1 hectare in Germany produces a lot of resources. But if I am using resources equivalent of 1 hectare in Algeria, it is less impactful because land is less productive. Okay. So this answers the second question, how do you normalize across different regions? Now moving to the third question, how do you consider different types of land? Now, before I get into the calculation, let me just list out the different types of lands that are considered in ecological footprint calculation. First is cropland, which is considered for all agricultural products. Second is grazing land for animal products. So meat that we consume, the animals graze on land, so that's why we need to consider grazing land. Fishing ground for fish, seafood and similar products. Forest land, which is primarily and overwhelmingly for timber, but could be used for some other resources as well. Built up area for housing, infrastructure and so on. And uptake of land to accommodate carbon footprint. In many cases, forest land is assumed to be the land required for capturing the CO2 emissions. Now the question is, how do you normalize these different types of land? Or in other words, is 1 acre of cropland or 1 hectare of cropland equivalent to 1 hectare of grazing land and same as 1 hectare of forest land? Probably not. And in the next slide, I will explain how this is addressed in the ecological footprint calculation. So this is considered by considering a factor known as equivalence factor. And this table shows the equivalence factor for different types of land that I mentioned on the previous slide. And the unit for equivalence factor is global hectares per hectare. So when I say that the cropland equivalence factor is 2.51, it implies that 1 hectare of cropland is equivalent to 2.51 global hectares. 1 hectare of forest land is equivalent to 1.26 global hectares, and so on. Now what this actually captures is that cropland is more valuable, it is more productive as compared to some of the other lands, and cropland is more valuable. So if I am using resources equivalent of 1 hectare of cropland versus I am using resources equivalent of 1 hectare of forest, then the case when I am using 1 hectare of cropland is that is creating more impact because cropland is more valuable. So this equivalence factors allows you to normalize across different types of lands. So to summarize the calculations, this is the final equation for area required in global hectares. The first term here captures the total area that is needed at the local level. The second term, which is the yield factor, converts that area into a national or a global average number for a particular category of land, such as cropland, forest land and so on, based on the regional and the global average yield. And the third factor normalizes different types of land. So it gives you a final number which is in global hectares. So you generate the resources consumed or the product required data and then do this calculation for all the resources that are consumed for an individual. If you want to know the ecological footprint of consumption, you can do some calculations based on this. So you have to calculate the ecological footprint because of production and then adjust it for the import and export numbers. This is because the ecological footprint of something that is imported could be very different from what is exported and so on. So this summarizes the final equation. Just final point about the data that is used to generate these numbers. The data primarily comes from various agencies, Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations or FAO Stat, UN Statistics Division, International Energy Agencies, other published literature, national census data and so on. So the ecological footprint relies on data from various resources. So the important learning outcomes of this module are: ecological footprint calculation is based on resources consumed, different types of regions normalized using yield factors, different types of land normalized using equivalence factor, and one thing I want to highlight is that the calculations discussed in this module are very preliminary. These tell you the conceptual way of calculating. The actual calculations are much more involved because of various additional factors. Hello. In this module, I will conclude the discussion on ecological footprint and introduce a related concept of biocapacity and do some sustainability related interpretation based on the relative values of ecological footprint and biocapacity. So we have already seen the concept of ecological footprint. We have also understood how the calculations are performed. Now I want to emphasize that ecological footprint has several limitations. First of all, it does not consider all environmental impact possibilities. It only considers those that can be converted to land area. So it in some ways it is an underestimation of our actual environmental footprint. Secondly, the conversion impacts to only land area is questionable in some cases. There are a lot of approximations involved. Third, it makes several assumptions about the lifestyle based on limited questions. For example, going back to the web-based tool that we used to calculate our ecological footprint. Now that web-based tool doesn't really consider the local or regional conditions that are part of the lifestyle. So for example, the kind of housing that exists in India or the kind of climate control options that are used in India were not directly incorporated in that web-based tool. So all of these things mean that ecological footprint calculation is an approximation, but these are the limitations with any index. If you remember, when we compared indicators versus indices, I told you that index always involves some kind of an approximation, but it is a very powerful idea because it converts everything into a single number. So whenever you are using ecological footprint, you have to be aware of these limitations and the potential uses of ecological footprint. I want to introduce a concept of biocapacity which is related to ecological footprint. Now in ecological footprint, the idea was to look at the resources that are consumed by an individual and convert those into the land that is required, and the unit is global hectares. In biocapacity, we do a reverse calculation. In biocapacity, we find out how much total productive land is available and therefore how much can be sustainably be allotted to a single individual. So the unit again is global hectares. So this is again global hectares per person, but it tells you how much area an individual can be allotted given the current resources. So biocapacity is a function of two important things. One is the total productive area. It again includes different types of areas that we have already seen, like cropland, grazing land, forest land, and so on. And it is also a function of population because we are calculating the area that can be allotted to a single individual. So the same productive area, if the population is very high, then the biocapacity will go down because the number of people who want to use that area are more. And broadly speaking, if your ecological footprint is less than or equal to biocapacity, then we can say that sustainability is likely because your footprint is less than what can sustainably be provided. But this concept of biocapacity and vis-a-vis ecological footprint, it brings forth certain very interesting aspects from a sustainability standpoint. And let me explain that by taking the example of India and Norway. In this table, I have given the required information for these two countries. So Norway has an ecological footprint of 4.98 gigahectares per person. India has a much lower ecological footprint of 1.16 gigahectares per person. The biocapacity, on the other hand, for Norway is 8.18 gigahectares and India is 0.5. I have also given you the global numbers. So global ecological footprint is 3.3 gigahectares per person and global biocapacity is 1.9 gigahectares per person. Now here, if I compare the ecological footprint of an Indian citizen, we can make an argument that it is much lower than the average ecological footprint of a global citizen, which means that Indian way of living is very sustainable. And if everybody lived like India, the impacts will go down. In fact, if everybody lived like India and everybody had ecological footprint like a typical Indian individual, then that value is lower than the global biocapacity. So sustainability is definitely likely. And people who are living in Norway actually have a much higher impact, and they need to shift to a sustainable lifestyle and reduce their ecological footprint. Now, let's look at the biocapacity. Now, although India, the ecological footprint of an average individual in India is lower than the global biocapacity, it is actually much higher than the biocapacity in India. So the biocapacity in India is only 0.5 global hectares. In other words, every individual in India, if we if you consider only resources available in India, only 0.5 global hectares can be allotted to a single individual. But we are actually using 1.16. So purely at the national level, we are not sustainable because we are consuming more than our biocapacity. Our ecological footprint is more than our biocapacity. And it's reverse for Norway. So just a little while ago, I made an argument that citizens in Norway have a much higher global footprint, ecological footprint than global average, and therefore they need to reduce. But their biocapacity is also very high. In fact, the biocapacity is almost twice that of ecological footprint. So as a nation, people in Norway are very sustainable because their ecological footprint is much lower than their biocapacity. So can we actually blame citizens in Norway for consuming more resources, or can we take credit in India for being ecologically sustainable? Because strictly considering national boundaries, we are consuming more resources than we can sustainably provide. So these kind of questions come up when we look at ecological footprint and compare it with biocapacity, and the answer about what is sustainable, what is not sustainable may not be so straightforward. If you look at the trend in both ecological footprint and biocapacity, it looks something like this. Now, on one hand, ecological footprint in general is, although it has sort of stabilized a little bit, but it has gone up from 1960. So you have ecological footprint that is increasing or at least not decreasing in the long term. But unfortunately, the biocapacity itself is going down. And that is because the lands are getting degraded, the fishing stock is getting degraded, and so on. So even if we are able to maintain the ecological footprint at a constant value, it may still not be sufficient if the biocapacity itself goes down. Eventually, we want that this green line is above the red line. So that means you either reduce the ecological footprint significantly, or you reduce the ecological footprint and at the same time start increasing the biocapacity. This could be done by land conservation, protecting resources, and so on. So this figure very nicely captures the significant challenge that we have in ensuring that our resources are consumed in a sustainable manner. The other issue is, how does ecological footprint compare with the Human Development Index? Now, we have previously looked at the calculation of Human Development Index, and I told you that it captures the economic factors, the educational factors, and the health factors or life expectancy. Now, how does it compare with the ecological footprint? Because HDI directly doesn't include any environmental impact or environmental factor. Now, this figure, which is taken from this source at the bottom, it shows the relationship between the Human Development Index on x-axis and ecological footprint on y-axis. And I have drawn this red line which shows the general trend. What you see here is that countries that have high Human Development Index, in this last region, almost all of them have fairly high ecological footprint. This dashed line represents the world biocapacity in 1961, and as we saw in the last slide, the world biocapacity itself is going down. So world biocapacity in 2012 was this second dashed line at the bottom. So you ideally do not want any country to have ecological footprint higher than this, and which means that this is really your desired quadrant where you have very high human development index and also low ecological footprint, and there is not a single country which falls in this range, which means that those countries that are actually doing well in terms of human development index are not doing so well in terms of ecological footprint. So human development index doesn't actually capture the environmental impact. And that is something important that we need to realize. So every time we discuss about human development index, we need to also look at ecological footprint or some other ecological environmental impact measure. So the important learning outcomes of this module were first that ecological footprint doesn't capture all types of impacts. It provides a ballpark figure and is certainly an underestimate of the actual environmental impact that we have as individuals. Second thing is ecological footprint must be considered vis-a-vis the biocapacity because they could give different interpretations. And third, human development index doesn't capture the environmental impact of human development. Finally, I want to emphasize that both these indices, be it ecological footprint or human development index, are generally calculated at the national level. These are calculated for a typical individual in a country. Obviously, there are going to be variations within a single country also, or within across different regions of the country, but all of that is averaged and it gives you an index. So these index, be it ecological footprint or human development index, are generally used for policy related decisions. These indices are not generally used for engineering calculations or for business assessment. So that is something you want to, you should remember. There are several types of indices available and each index has its own use, and you have to be careful of using an index that is most relevant for that particular application in mind. Thank you.